Think tanks are particularly unique because they are trying to achieve a number of objectives. The core of their work is to inform public policy, but they also do other things, and they can convene different policy actors. They can bring groups that might disagree on certain policies together. They can build capacities of policy analysts, of policy makers, of civil society actors, of even media analysts and journalists. They can also provide legitimacy to policies by supporting them with evidence, with information, with advice. Think tanks matter because they offer a moral foundation to policy making. They have the capacity to provide truth through their research. They have the capacity to help achieve justice by advising government in the way they allocate and distribute resources. And they have the capacity to make visible and to give voice to the most vulnerable people and populations in our societies. We are living in sort of confusing times. If you are in Eastern Europe, in the Western Balkans, you are facing oppression sometimes from your governments, a critique from the public. If you are in the US or the UK, you might have political parties that are not sure where to go, what direction to take, and therefore think tanks find themselves not knowing what kind of research to carry out, how to communicate their work, who should be their audiences. I think the same thing is happening in Latin America, in Africa, in South Asia, as governments are in flux, or as politics is in flux. So it's very important for think tanks to reflect on their foundations, on their roles in their societies. And I think to ask the question about what's behind them, what's the moral idea behind them, is a very useful question. When we met last year at the first On Think Tanks conference here in London, we discussed the characteristics of the think tank of the future. We said they had to be good researchers, but they also had to be good managers, good communicators, good fundraisers. This is still true. But we have heard over the last couple of days that think tankers have to be also moral persons. They have to be actors who reflect on their work and the consequence of their work. They also have to learn how to engage with a much wider audience than we had expected last year. Last year we talked about think tanks engaging actively with the media, with political actors, with policymakers, with people who influence policy. But over the last couple of days, we've heard that think tanks need to learn to engage with the general public, with grassroots. And this is something that most think tankers are not used to. So the On Think Tanks conference in 2018 has been a pleasant surprise. It has been a lot of work to put it together. We have had more people, at least double the numbers of last year. We have had far more panels and sessions discussing a number of issues, most of which came from the participants themselves. We have talked about the moral case of evidence-informed policy. We have talked about the future of communication. We have talked about funding, research credibility. We have talked about the role of think tanks in politicized and polarized and populist contexts, and many other topics. And above all, we at On Think Tanks, even though we write about this, we study these organizations, I think we have learned an awful lot. The On Think Tanks conference is an opportunity for people to come together and discuss things that they don't get a chance to talk at work or at the more traditional conferences. We encourage people to explore new ideas and new topics, to share them with their fellow participants, even if they're not sure that their idea is correct. We like that. We like to be challenged. We encourage the challenge of ideas, and we encourage conversations over lunch, over coffee, over drinks, because we think this is in creating relationships between people that we're going to get the most fruitful discussions, and that we might arrive to some answers that we're all looking for. So after these 2 days, talking to people from all over the world, learning from their experiences and their work, I think it's obvious for us that these initiatives need to be supported, and at On Think Tanks we will support them, and we look forward to meeting many of them again in a year's time, and hopefully making new friends.